What if everything that you thought was truth was a lie, and everything was not as it seems to be? Everything that you knew about the pyramids turns out to be a grain of sand in the vast desert of knowledge. What if there was a unifying matrix to the universe where the keys unlock the code?
Tesla-based teleportation and time travel. We'll be learning more about that. These are devices that the US government has had for the last 40 years, time travel and teleportation capabilities.
In this episode of Unlocking the Code, I am going to introduce the basic concepts of teleportation and the science fact and fiction that explains the reality of this concept. Teleportation is a subject that stirs up exciting childhood memories of Star Trek, Harry Potter, and Hollywood blockbuster films like Jumper and The Matrix, to name but a few. The famous phrases that spring to mind are, "to boldly go where no man has gone before," or the word energize. Teleportation is a hypothetical method of transportation in which matter or information is dematerialized, usually instantaneously at one point and recreated at another. Teleportation is also the act or process of moving an object or person by psychokinesis. The term psychokinesis is deemed to have originated from Charles Fort as far back as the 1870s, though he used it to describe the magical transport between Earth and the heavens. It seems our ancestors were aware of telekinesis, and interestingly, Charles Fort wrote a paper on teleportation in 1895, in which he explained that telekinesis is the movement of objects by scientifically inexplicable means, as by the exercise of an occult power. Psychokinesis is the production of motion in physical objects by the exercise of psychic or mental powers. In more modern times, as far back as 1935, Einstein and the others coined the phrase quantum teleportation. Quantum teleportation, by definition, in simple terms, is the instantaneous transference of all quantum properties of an object from one quantum system reality to another, without physical contact with the aether that separates it. Teleportation is the name given by science fiction writers to the feat of making an object or person disintegrate in one place while a perfect replica appears somewhere else. How this is accomplished is usually not explained in detail, but the general idea seems to be that the original object is scanned in such a way as to extract all of the information from it. Then this information is transmitted to the receiving location and used to reconstruct the replica, not necessarily from the actual material of the original. This is called the spooky interaction, and we will look at this in more detail later on in this discussion. A teleportation machine, theoretically, would be like a fax machine, except that it would work on three-dimensional objects as well as documents. It would produce an exact copy rather than an approximate facsimile. But, and it is a big but, it would also destroy the original in the process of scanning it. A few science fiction writers who wrote Star Trek envisage teleporters that preserve the original, and the plot gets very complicated when the original and teleported versions of the same person meet. The more common type of teleporter destroys the original, functioning as a super transportation device and not as a perfect replicator of source soul energy and the human or animal body. As I understand the deeper concept, this statement has important esoteric connections. We will revisit and further explain this concept later in the series. But for now, this concept states that the use of a machine to teleport humans and animals may result in the loss of the soul energy connection of the body, or the soul energy not recognizing the newly created teleported copy of the body. In 1993, an international group of 6 scientists, including IBM fellow Charles H. Burnett, confirmed the institutions of the majority of science fiction writers by showing that perfect teleportation is indeed possible in principle, but only if the original is destroyed. Until recently, teleportation was not taken seriously by scientists because it was thought to violate the uncertainty principle of quantum mechanics, which forbids any measuring or scanning process from extracting all the information in an atom or other object. According to the uncertainty principle, the more accurately an object is scanned, the more it is disturbed by the scanning process, until one reaches a point where the object's original state has been completely disrupted, still without having extracted enough information to make a perfect replica. This sounds like a solid logical argument against teleportation, because if one cannot extract enough information from an object to make a perfect copy, it would seem that a perfect copy cannot simply be made. But the 6 scientists found a way to defeat this logical paradox using a celebrated feature of quantum mechanics known as the Einstein-Podolsky-Rosen effect, or EPR. In simple terms, they found a way to scan out part of the information from an object A, as we can discern in the diagram, which one wishes to teleport, while causing the remaining unscanned part of the information to pass via the EPR effect into another object C, which has never been in contact with A. Later, by applying to C a treatment depending on the scanned out information, it is possible to maneuver C into exactly the same state as A was before it was scanned. As A itself is no longer in that state, having been thoroughly disrupted by the scanning, then logically what is being achieved is teleportation and not replication. As this figure suggests, the unscanned part of the information is conveyed from A to C by an intermediary object, B, which interacts first with C and then with A. What? Can it really be correct to say first with C and then with A? Surely, in order to convey something from A to C, the delivery vehicle must first visit A before C and not the other way around. But there is a subtle, unscannable kind of information that, unlike any ordinary information, can be delivered in a backward fashion. This kind of information is also called the Einstein-Podolsky-Rosen, or EPR correlation, or what is better known in the scientific world as entanglement. And this has been at least partly understood since the early 1930s, when it was discussed in a famous paper by Albert Einstein, Boris Podolsky, and Nathan Rosen. However, at this point I must add that there was a paper published in 1895, which was, it seems, unethically used by the 6 IBM notable scientists and displayed as their own work without crediting the name of the original writer in 1992. This information was deleted and scrubbed from the internet, albeit, it seems, unsuccessfully on this occasion. In the 1960s, John Bell showed that a pair of entangled particles, which were once in contact, but later moved too far apart to interact directly, can exhibit individually random behaviors that is too strongly correlated to be explained. Experiments on photons and other particles have repeatedly confirmed these correlations, therefore providing strong evidence for the validity of quantum mechanics. Another well-known fact about EPR correlations is that they cannot by themselves deliver a meaningful and controllable message. It was thought that only the usefulness was improving the validity of quantum mechanics. But now it is known that, through the phenomenon of quantum teleportation, they can deliver exactly that part of the information in an object which is too delicate to be scanned out and delivered by conventional methods. This figure compares conventional facsimile transmission with quantum teleportation. In conventional facsimile transmission, the original is scanned extracting partial information about it, but it remains more or less intact after the scanning process. The scanned information is sent to the receiving station where it is imprinted on some raw materials, for example, paper, to produce an approximate copy of the original. In quantum teleportation, two objects, B and C, are first brought into contact and then separated. Object B is taken to the sending station, while object C taken to the receiving station. At the receiving station, object B is scanned together with the original object A, which one wishes to teleport, yielding some information and totally disrupting the state of A and B. The scanned information is sent to the receiving station where it is used to select one of several treatments to be applied to object C, therefore putting C into an exact replica of the former state of A. June the 17th, 2002, Australian scientists made a teleportation breakthrough, which is a long way from Star Trek. But teleportation, or the disembodiment of an object in one location, its reconstruction in another, was successfully carried out in a physics lab in Australia. Scientists at the Australian National University, ANU, made a beam of light disappear in one place and reappear in another a short distance away. The achievement confirms that, in theory, teleportation is possible, at least for subatomic particles. Whether it can be done for larger living entities, such as humans or animals, remains to be seen. The more likely spin-off applications will come in telecommunications, enabling much faster transfer of data and the use of an encryption process that can never be broken. This today we call quantum locking. Teleportation has been one of the hottest topics amongst physicists working in quantum mechanics, the study of the fundamental structure of matter and how it interacts in time and space. According to known and accepted mainstream theory, it took just 4 years to successfully teleport a laser beam, and 2 years more to teleport multiple items successfully, after pioneering work in 1998 at the California Institute of Technology showed that it should be possible. Australian researchers have exploited a phenomenon called quantum entanglement, which links the properties of two photons of light created at the same time. This we call the spooky interaction. What it means is that two identical protons can be created and sent to different places in time and space. Time travel, it seems, is being discussed here, albeit in an abstract way. It is possible to force one photon into a specific quantum mechanical state, and, because the two photons are connected in some way, the other photon will instantaneously take up a complementary state. This entanglement process offers the prospect of sending a signal faster than the speed of light, and this principle has been discussed many times and many decades before this very limited and then suppressed public disclosure project. Entanglement is a subject we will return to many times and discuss in more detail later in the series, but for now I will add that this offers the reality prospect of a Star Trek-style transporter being created. Using quantum entanglement, ANU physicist Ping Koi Lam disassembled a laser light at one end of an optical communication system and recreated a replica a meter away. An encoded signal is embedded in an input stream of protons, which is entangled with another beam. Elsewhere in the lab, the beam of photons and the associated signal was then reconstituted. The applications of teleportation for computers and communications over the next decade are very exciting, said Lam. Quantum teleportation could make encrypted or coded information 100% secure, Dr. Lam said, because even if intercepted, the message would be unintelligible unless it was intended for a specific recipient. It should be possible to construct a perfect cryptography system. When two parties want to communicate with one another, we can enable the secrecy of the communication to be absolutely perfect. For a human to be teleported, a machine would have to be built that could pinpoint and analyze the trillions and trillions of atoms that make up the human body. And we must not forget that humans are also made up of soul source energies. Quantum teleporting is problematic for humans because the original is destroyed in the process of creating the replica, at least in theory. As we move forward into our future teleportation, future, as I have clearly explained, is now no longer just the domain of science fiction, but it is instead embedded very firmly in science-proven theoretical theories. This is the second matrix key that has now been unlocked, and with the Stargate matrix key interconnections being firmly established, we will revisit this thrilling subject for a more intuitive, discerning understanding and reveal more proven scientific knowledge-based facts and introduce alternative theories for discussion later in the series. But for now, I leave you with the immortal words of Captain James T. Kirk. 1. To beam up.
You've been watching Unlocking the Code with host Neil Wilson. To connect to Neil or to check out our other shows, head to lifesource.global. And don't forget, hit the like, subscribe and share buttons. This show has been brought to you by Source Light Productions.